New York City Mayor Eric Adams, we're going to be discussing him with Pascal Robert of the Black Agenda Report and This is Revolution podcast as soon as he's available. But what has he done? Dwayne, let me know when you get that clip. He's basically, I don't know who this guy thinks he is. Let me just start there. He is trying to present himself as a black man, a Democrat, which I don't care about the Democrat part, like, well, whatever, but he ran as a Democrat. But now he is so ultra police, so pro police, which I would argue he's always been pro police. So I don't know why New York would have elected this man, but he's the mayor. He's so pro police. He was talking about bringing stop and frisk back. I think he said he was joking about that. But I want you to listen to this clip as we get ready for our next guest. And he's discussing how he wants to train New Yorkers to respect the police and keep their distance when filming police officers. And he said, if your iPhone is bad, get you a new iPhone because you don't have to get that close to his police officers when they're beating up citizens and you're trying to film it. That's the latest from Eric Adams. He just said it yesterday. Let's hear it from his own mouth.
With policing and other crimes with others, if people didn't document it, what's your message to the community when they want to document what's going on? We're trying to stay safe, getting guns off the streets.
Without a doubt, and that is one thing that we're going to do. We're going to teach the public how to properly document. If an officer is on the ground wrestling with someone that has a gun, they should not have to worry about someone standing over them with a camera while they're wrestling with someone. If an officer is trying to prevent a dispute from taking place and de-escalate that dispute, they should have someone standing over their shoulders with a camera in their face, yelling and screaming out there at them without even realizing what the encounter is all about. There's a proper way to police and there's a proper way to document. If your iPhone can't catch that picture with you being at a safe distance, then you need to upgrade your iPhone. Stop being on top of my police officers while they're carrying out their jobs. That is not acceptable and it won't be tolerated. That is a very dangerous environment you are creating when you're on top of that officer who has an understanding of what he's doing at the time, yelling police brutality, yelling at the officer, calling them names. Now he has to worry about who's behind him. Is he part of the process that he's trying to de-escalate? That has gotten out of control. You can safely document an incident, but we can use that footage to analyze what happened. But that's not what's happening right now in our city. We're finding people who are standing on top of the officer while he's involved in a dangerous encounter. Not acceptable. It's not going to continue to happen.
He said, yeah, man. He said a lot there. Joining us now to discuss is Pascal Robert. He is of the Black Agenda Report, and This is Revolution podcast. First and foremost, good morning to you, brother. How are you?
Good morning to you, Brother Ben. Good to be on your show. Good morning to you as well, to your co-host. Glad to have me here.
Good morning. Absolutely. Good morning.
Brother, we've been talking, and you describe Eric Adams as the neoliberal corporate Democrat trial balloon who is sent to crush and smash the progressive wing of the party, the Sanders wing of the party. Now, when I read that, I said yes and amen and come on the show and talk about it. Tell us why Eric Adams is this new wave of attack against actual progress, not just for people in general, but for Black people specifically.
Well, to do this, I think we have to put things in a certain context of the evolution of Black politics and the Black political class, particularly in the last 20 years. All right. We basically went from a paradigm of the Black political class, and the Black political class, for your audience who don't know, are the elected officials and also the social superstructure that exists in the Black community around civil rights organizations, the Black church, membership organizations, fraternities, sororities, and so on and so forth, that buttress the political establishment as well as the ideological and political choices that exist in the Black community in terms of what kind of options we have. And they basically act as what you would call a buffer class. class that buttresses support traditionally for the Democratic Party and promotes policies usually to their benefit in exchange for patronage that I pejoratively call fatback and biscuits to their betterment and usually to the detriment of poor and working class Black people. But there has been an evolution in the nature of the Black political class in the 50 plus years post-civil rights, in that the first generation of the Black political class that came out of the Gary, Indiana Convention in the 1970s were traditionally former civil rights affiliated type politicos who, because of working through government programs through the Great Society, developed an affinity and a connection to political administrations in the Democratic Party, and then rose to the level of becoming the first iteration of the Black political class. But because they had to maintain certain credentials with the grassroots civil rights community in the kind of post-Black Power era, they still had to at least have the patina or illusion of a redistributive agenda to Black folk. Right, that's how you get your Maynard Jacksons, your Andrew Youngs, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm trying to be quick here because I know time is of the essence. So I'm trying to go through this lesson. We move into the 80s and 90s in the way in which neoliberalism, which is basically a fancy way for shifting capitalism to hyper-privatization, deregulation of finance capital, and the removing of government-funded policy to the benefit of the population to a more pro-capitalist, pro-private sector agenda to marketize everything. In that era, what we have to understand is that Black politics reflects that change in the nature of capitalism in America. And what we find is our Black political officials, particularly what we call the urban regimes, because, some of your audience may not be old enough, but I'm old enough to remember where in a time where every major city in America had a Black mayor. New York City had Dinkins, you had Howard Washington, you had L.A., had, I forgot the name of I always forget the name of the brother who was mayor of L.A. back in the day. Atlanta, so on and so forth. So there was a proliferation of Black mayors in these cities, but because these cities were basically transforming into a period of neoliberalism where they did not have the same kind of government largesse as they did in the 50s, these guys unfortunately had to oversee much austerity type politics that disadvantaged working class and poor Black people, and also govern over regimes of mass incarceration, because Black people in a period of economic precarity due to neoliberalism, the poor are going to be sacrificed to mass incarceration. Black and white, but disproportionately Black. So that is the first shift of the Black political class away from what we saw in the 70s, where they could at least pretend to have a redistributive agenda, right? And then in the 90s, with the rise of democratic neoliberalism, the Black political class pretty much embraces neoliberalism because they're reacting to the fear of the Newt Gingrich Republicans.
That's right.
Bill Clinton is the first Democrat who wins after 3 presidential elections where you have Republicans having won. Reagan 80, Reagan 84, Bush the first 88. And those regimes were so right-wing, and you know this story as well as I do, Ben. The Democratic Party embraces the Democratic Leadership Conference, pivots to the right, supports corporate agenda, tough on crime, tough on Black people politics, and takes us into the 25, 30-year spectrum of Democrat-led neoliberal politics that's even worse for Black people, quite frankly, right? Okay, so the Black political class shifts in that way as well. What we see in the millennium is the rise of the first generation of truly neoliberal Black politicians. One of the things my mentor, Bruce Dixon and Glenn Ford, used to talk about is that there was a trial balloon of about 5 candidates to become the first Black president, and they all have very similar politics and aesthetics. Cory Booker, Barack Obama, Arthur Davis, Adrian Fenty, and Harold Ford Jr. All elite Ivy League educated or proximate, all very pro-corporate charter schools, all very highly financed by corporate America, all very pro-growth, pro-capitalist, pro-big business type politics, and all using respectability politics, pull up your pants type rhetoric. Very common. Michael Nutter was a Philadelphia manifestation of that politics. So that's like the third iteration of the Black political class. And we see what that got us, which is the rise of Obama, which some of my mentors and teachers like Bruce Dixon used to say was the death knell of Black politics. So what happens is that we shift from the neoliberal, really pro-capitalist, pro-corporate Black politician, which is still in the kind of aura capturing the imagination of Black folk. You have a pivot to the rise of Bernie Sanders and the quote unquote Sanders Democratic Socialist, AOC, so on and so forth. Now, though these people don't really capture the imagination of Black voters, they present an ideological challenge to all of the earlier manifestations of the Black political class, because Black people are now realizing these Negroes have not done anything for us. And now you have people like AOC and otherwise are talking about, hey, what about, a more expansive state government program to give you a federal jobs guarantee, a free college, free state college, healthcare, so on and so forth. So even though Black people may not be entering into supporting that politics, the challenge of these people seeming more progressive than the Black political class creates a conflict. This is a very important point that you must convey to your audience. The Black political class, particularly in the Congressional Black Caucus, much of their political legitimacy is premised on leveraging the bona fides of the civil rights movement and the illusion of being racially progressive to give them a voice to actually replicate very damaging pro-corporate corporate politics.
You mean people like Jim Clyburn? Anyway,
exactly.
Go ahead. We were talking about Eric Adams, though. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes. So I'm going to get to the point. What does Eric Adams represent? Eric Adams, I would argue, represents the fourth iteration of the Black political class, in that he is reacting to the failures of the neoliberal Obama type Black political class, the Cory Bookers, the Obamas, Fenty's, Harold Ford Jr.'s, etc. And he's also reacting to the rise of the AOC Sanders faction. And he's basically trying to tap dance between the two while still maintaining a fealty or an allegiance to the same corporate pro-Wall Street, pro-real estate development fact. Don't forget, Eric Adams was one of the most extensively backed real estate development backed candidates in that mayoral election that he won last year. And he's already made statements to Wall Street saying that we need you guys in New York. And there's an article by, I think his name is Chuck Gasparino. He's like one of these Wall Street guys. He's always on Fox News. It's in the New York Post. I was just reading it this morning preparing for the show, where literally, this is like a New York City white ethnic Wall Street guy who is praising former cop Black Mayor Eric Adams for his willingness to dump all that progressive, left socialist rhetoric crap and support big business and finance capital. And, Gasparino is really one of these blowhard right-wing capitalist types who's like, yeah, I'm glad to see Adams is not down with the comrades. And there's a quote that he has of Eric Adams where Adams literally says, we need more of you Wall Street guys and less of these AOC types.
Wow. Pascal, I want to ask you really briefly with the time we have, man, where does it go? Because not only is he everything that you listed there, right? And I mean, you gave us a lot, but I followed that thread. I followed what you were saying. Eric Adams is the evolution of, and we can say devolution of the Black political class, but he is himself a reaction to the last
what came before
class, the Black movement that came before.
A reaction to two factors. The neoliberal corporate, the neoliberal Black political class, the Obama, Fenty types, and the rise of the AOC progressive Sanders faction. And he's trying to thread the needle between the two.
And he's doing a balancing act also with, it seems to work, right? I guess what I'm trying to throw at you is, this twisted combination seems to have been enough, one, for him to get elected. Two, he's using this honeymoon period where he can leverage as much damage as he can, right? He's going as full police, pro-police as he's a former police officer himself, so that makes sense. But he is merging the worst of all of the categories. He's merging the police state with the exploitative nature of capitalism. He's merging it with the facade of blackness, the form of blackness, denying the power thereof. He's like the trifecta of black misleadership. Go ahead.
Let me tell you how absolutely spot on you are, and I applaud your astute assessment, which doesn't surprise me because you have very many astute assessments. Ben, is that?
Man, bless you, brother. I appreciate that. Now.
When Eric Adams was running, he was literally being touted by the black chattering class. And you know me long enough to know when I say black chattering class, I mean black media, black journalists, so on and so forth. The New York City black chattering class, people like Errol Lewis and others who are very good journalists. Errol Lewis is a very good New York City journalist, long time. I have respect for him. I think his politics are more conservative than mine, but he's a good, solid black journalist. These people were touting Eric Adams as the new black power in New York City. In other words, he is the new manifestation of black power in New York. There are articles to that effect, that he is the new. So what you're finding, right, is that there's a generation of black people who are about my age or a little older, who did not come out of the movement era, who are now, we're kind of like the adults in the room of the black communities we have throughout the country, right? And most of us are too young to have come out of the movement era or to have been adults. Even Eric Adams is too young to come out of it. So our only contextual memory of black politics is pretty much the black political class post-civil rights. So as a result, many of us have a fetish obsession with people like Maynard Jackson, people like other black political class officials who did expand the black middle class in their constituencies, but there's little discussion about how their policies affected working class and poor black people.
Pascal, we have so much to discuss. I know it's been a while since I had you on. I got to get you back soon. You come with a volume of knowledge and context and nuance that is necessary. But I'm going to have to hold the conversation here. Tell everyone how they can get up with you and support your work.
Absolutely. You guys can check us out at This Is Revolution Podcast at all your relevant podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, so on and so forth. This Is Revolution Podcast at YouTube. You can check me out at PROBERT at PRobert06. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on social media. You can Google my name at Black Agenda Report. You'll see my work. I also write for Newsweek as well. You can check my name out, and you'll see my articles in Newsweek. I have articles in the Huffington Post. As Ben can tell you, I've been writing about black politics for over a decade now. So, for those who are not familiar with my work, you can check it out.
You've been in this longer than I have, brother. I appreciate everything that you do. We'll talk with you soon.
All right, brother. Peace.